Hello and welcome to the QA Therapy podcast. Looking to improve your overall testing and quality practices? My name is Xray. That's what they tell me. And I'm a solution architect and testing advocate at Xray.
And my name is Cristiano Cunha. I'm also a solution architect and test advocate. And we'll be your hosts and the QA therapists throughout this series. In this podcast, we're going to tackle some of the most testing and quality challenges that we all face in our teams. Some of us may have heard the buzz around testability, while others may just have missed it. Sometimes we focus on automation and tests to raise quality of our products and forget about testability and exploratory testing and what they mean for our teams and our products. And to assist us with this topic, we have a special guest with us, Ash Winter. But before welcoming him, let's see what brings us here. What are the symptoms that you may have feeling that compelled you to listen to this podcast? So do you have a hard time navigating the avalanche of information that your product is outputting? Or in the contrary, is it hard to know if your product is behaving well? Do you have lack of logs, no feedback whatsoever? Or even, do you need your product and all its dependencies to be correctly installed so you can test it? Are your application or deployment not stable or fully automated that each installation gives you a different experience?
So all of these items that Cristiano were referring to are symptoms that maybe your application or product is not easily testable. In this fast-paced world, more and more products become complex and have dependencies. With these complex products, sometimes architecture becomes too coupled, and it is hard to find the root of the issues because the paths are long and depend on many variables. On the other hand, you want to use exploratory testing, but due to your application complex nature, it is hard to describe or reproduce a problem. Let's dive a bit into this topic. And today, as Cristiano mentioned, we have here with us Ash Winter, our expert QA therapist, to assist us with diagnosis and prescription based on these symptoms related to having your products testable and the usage of exploratory testing. Ash is an experienced community-focused tester and coach, and prize winner on conferences, by the way. He's a co-organizer of the Leads Test Atelier, co-author of the book Team Guide to Software Testability, and the co-presenter of the podcast. Yes, he has a podcast. What a lot of things. He's also a frequent speaker in various conferences where he shares different subjects related to testing. Welcome, Ash. Are you comfortable on our QA therapy couch?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the name of the podcast as well, because what's the saying? I think it was Anna Bayek who said, testers are the only role who have to improve the organization in order to do their jobs. So we are all organizational therapists.
Yes, indeed.
And then even the therapist needs therapy sometimes, right?
Oh,
exactly.
That's another good point. So let's start our journey, and let me start right away with our first question. And
sure.
Of course, I would have to ask you, how would you define testability?
So I think there's like an easy answer, and it's like how easy it is to test something, a feature, a system, a document, Jira ticket, or whatever it is. But I think that's a bit too simple and not particularly compelling. So, because the great thing about testability, it's got some really interesting nuances to it. So something that might be easy to test for me might be hard to test for you. If we're both landed in the same company, in the same team, but I know the domain, the technologies, the rest of the team really well, then it's probably going to be fairly easy for me to test, even if the system itself isn't that testable. So I prefer testability with a bit more of a team definition, hence the Team Guide to Testability as the book. So it's how easy is it for a team to test something? Because I have a firm belief that if your testability is low, then the testers end up doing all the testing and the whole team struggles to get involved. Because over the course of my career, when there's been something really horrible to test, which needs loads of setup and lots of configuration, and every time you ask a developer for help, they'll be like, well, yeah, I could do that, but I've got a dentist appointment or, something like that. So if you want to get your whole team involved, then to me, testability is where it's at.
Yeah, and as we are in the definition mode and to set the tone, let's clarify also what is exploratory testing for you.
I quite like the phrase simultaneous testing and learning because it avoids the sort of too much bias and the urge to confirm acceptance criteria. Because obviously the problem with having tightly defined acceptance criteria is that you want to test to them, which exploratory testing is supposed to take you beyond that. So I quite like the testing and learning rather than confirming. That's what exploratory testing means to me. And I like the doing of the testing rather than the planning as such. I'm very much a fan of saying, let's get an initial charter going for the main journey, test for 30 minutes, an hour or so, and then generate more from there. Because I guess you want to give the feedback as soon as possible to the person who's built it. Context switching is hard for developers, and I think exploratory testing is an opportunity to give the developers and whoever else is interested in that feature the feedback as early as possible. That's what's great about exploratory testing. And I'm a big note taker as well. I've got like a machine full of markdown files with filled with notes, bugs, questions, scenarios, and I really value it as like a history of what I've tested, but without having to, use a particularly strict method of storing these things. So yeah, it's that simultaneous testing and learning that I value, because I like the freedom of exploratory testing to go with the energy.
And this is also like a thing that we can do at any moment in time, right? We don't need to do it just at the end, at the start. We can do it any time that we want, right?
Yeah. So, whatever it is you want to explore, it's open to you. I liked Dan Ashby's iteration of the continuous testing in DevOps model, where it's like, we can test wherever we like, and exploratory testing is the key to that, isn't it? Whether it's your pipeline or a pull request or whatever it is, exploratory testing is the key to me to unlocking being able to test, because you can get into the performance of testing very quickly with a good base of exploratory testing skills, which enables you to test wherever and whatever you like.
Let's jump to the testability topic. And so this topic that you know so well and that you really are interested on. So whenever talking about testability, we often hear references to the CODS model: control, observability, decomposability, simplicity. Can you describe it for our listeners? What it means, what its purpose?
So this is one of Rob Meany.
Rob Meany.
So who I wrote the testability book with, who is a very energetic bundle of ideas, let's say. So he's good with, because I think the CODS model came from a story from when one of his relatively early in his career, they were doing like a company he was working for was doing some kind of platform migration, and it was really, really hard to test, and they were getting frustrated because he had hours and hours of regression testing for each build, which didn't find issues anyway because the system was very hard to control, hard to observe, and so on and so forth. So he came up to sort of distilled those lessons into the CODS model. And to me, at its core, it's an architectural model, I think. So I like to use it when, say, if you get that invitation as a tester to go into a session on, the next iteration of your architecture or the target architecture for a new application, then CODS model is like really useful to bring in there, because I always find that with architecture, testability gains are to be found early. Once architectural decisions have been made, they're not irreversible by any means, but they're very hard to try and retrofit testability to afterwards.
Oh yeah, indeed.
So and then which could make it very difficult.
I think that what you just said about including the tester on architectural discussion is really important for the testability part. And I have like always three things in my head when I go to those meetings: is performance, security, and testability. They go almost hand to hand, and sometimes are easily forgotten when we just focus on the features. So I believe that having someone that are just asking those questions there is really, really important.
If you do get the invite to a session like that, and you don't have a model in mind, like Cristiano, you've just described performance, security, and testability. So you come into that session with something in your mind about what good would look like, or at least some questions to ask. So to me, if you're, as a tester, if you get invited and then you don't have anything to contribute, or you don't have anything to evaluate the discussion against, is probably a better way of putting it. Because at least if you said, I think about performance, security, and testability, then in your head, you can detect if one of those things isn't discussed in that setting, you could at least say, well, hang on, have we considered, the performance and scale of this system?
Yeah.
Which is a good question, isn't it, for a tester to bring to the table? And it's the same for me with the CODS model. I'm like, have I detected people talking about controllability, observability, decomposability, and simplicity? Sorry, are all too long, those words, aren't they? We should simplify them. But as long as I detect some mention of those and taking those into account, I'm like, right, okay, this system, this architecture has probably got a high degree of testability. Whereas if I come out like absolutely baffled, then it's probably fails the simplicity check. If it's like, this has 10 different forms of technology in it, and we use 3 different programming languages within this one system, it's like, that's probably not going to be so easy to maintain, is it? And test.
Yeah.
So
what baffled me in my last company was, no one was able to describe the interactions between the services. We need at least 10 guys there to describe what was happening. So it was really, really... Simplicity was not one of the things.
Yeah, exactly.
And usually when we grow, it only complicates things. But that's another problem. Getting back to the questions, and just to clarify another point that we often see associated to testability, and I believe that is also present in your book, that is the 10 P's of testability.
Yes,
so now instead of control, observability, decomposability, simplicity, you have people, philosophy, product, process, project, problem, pipeline, productivity, production, issues, and proactivity. I will ask you just to, in your words, what are these 10 Ps? How do they compare to the CODS model? Are there another model? Are there kind of something different? How to approach it? How to use it to increase this testability?
Yeah, because the 10 Ps describes the team's testing experience, which I think, because the CODS model is more of an architectural model, whereas I think the 10 Ps is a bit more rounded. I think it's more about like the people, like the team's experience of how they test. So I think it's a bit more of a wider view, is probably my description, whereas CODS is much more like focused on a particular part of the on the architecture. But to kind of balance that out a little bit, we've badged it as like similar to the Spotify team health check. So where you have like I can't remember what the categories are in the Spotify health check. People have taken it and made new categories, but you have like a traffic light system with with red is bad, green is good, amber is it's fine, don't worry about it. And I think that balances out the sort of depth of it quite nicely, because you could just go through it as every quarter you can do like a testability health check and gather information about how teams are doing on each of these Ps. So I think that's quite nice. In terms of like how they work together, whenever I think back like in my career or particular stories, like I remember I worked on a really, really great team with loads of developers who are enthusiastic about doing testing, helping you out and contribute into like the wider testing effort. But then after like a couple of months, the heat was on the project, and all the devs suddenly went into their shells and stopped offering to help with exploratory testing and test automation. But then it turned out that they'd been offered a bonus to deliver the code faster, as in to source control. So that's like the people were there and they wanted to do great testing work, but the project had changed things because the heat was on, and then people changed like how they react. So something like the 10 Ps helps you to tease some of that information out about, like, by looking at it from lots of different angles. So I find it quite a powerful like model to look at things from a very high level. And then if you do the health check with lots of teams, you can start to look at, well, how are we doing as an organization with testability as well.
In testing, we have all these different angles, these different perspectives on quality, right? And it's also like the same that whenever we are talking about testability, we can look at it from many different angles. Many times we ask ourselves, can we measure testing? And my question to you is, can we measure testability? Can testability measure somehow?
Yeah, I've seen there's actually been a few posts of late. I went to an event a little while ago where someone said they'd created a formula for the return on investment of having testers.
Right.
And I was like, I started laughing because I thought they were being ironic, but they weren't.
They weren't.
So no. And I said, usually I would be curious about such things, but I think my life is enhanced by not knowing this formula that you've decided to create.
Have you ever done a RAI on test automation or on testing? Side question.
No, I haven't.
I've been asked about that a long time ago.
I don't like metrics which single out testers, like number of test cases written, number of bugs raised, because I've been around for long enough to know that none of that matters really. And anyway, testability is about finding the most important bugs, not all the bugs. The more testable it is, the more likely you are to find the more important ones. But that's slightly off topic here. So I have 4 that I normally use. Some of them are probably things you can measure, but some of them are a bit more like about how you experience the testing. So time to start testing, I always put this one at the top. So if a developer says to you, this thing's ready to test, and then it takes a day for it to deploy, 2 days for you to get the test data ready, and then a day because you don't have permissions to access something, then you're 4 days in and the developer's already doing something else and you've blown it. You can't give any early feedback. Whereas if you can start testing, if a developer says this is ready and like 5 minutes later you're testing, then that's a good sign of testability, because it means you have control of your environments, whether you're building it locally or whatever, or it's sufficiently decomposable that you can test without the entire system, being all strung together, or being deployed to a integrated test environment. So time to start testing is really important. The next one is the that's weird ratio. So I often measure this by saying, if you start an exploratory testing session and then within a minute, something has happened that's relatively unrelated to what you're supposed to be testing, and then you have to go down that rabbit hole to find out what's going on, that's a sign of poor testability. Whereas if you can go for most of your exploratory testing session on the charter that you've set,
if you can stay focused, right?
Yeah. So that doesn't always happen, obviously, because we're testers. We don't follow, in terms of following scripts. I'm not sure anyone ever really did. Even when I was supposed to follow scripts, I never did, because there's always something more interesting just off to the side, right? But if you can't stay on your charter for any more than a few minutes when you're testing without something strange happening, then it suggests that you're not able to focus on the areas that you need to focus on. And then the next one is probably a bit more measurable. So a variety of testing activities. So if you only do exploratory testing, or you only do unit tests or acceptance test automation, you've probably got low testability for some reason. Either you don't have the skills to add other forms of testing to your testing strategy, or something like doing performance and load testing actually requires quite a high level of testability to do it meaningfully. So if you can't add types of tests like that to your strategy, then it suggests that you've got low testability. So it's kind of similar to what I said about the testers having to do the testing if you have a low testability system. The last one of the 4 is pairing time on testing. Developers and testers pairing to do unit tests, exploratory testing, whatever it is. If you see each other's work, all the pain and debt is exposed. And a developer will very quickly say, why are you doing that? When you just need to set this configuration item or use this endpoint to set up the data in this way. And you can get some massive gains from that. So I think pairing time on testing specifically is a good one to look at. So they would be my 4 that I try and start with. They don't target a particular role or a particular person in terms of their productivity. It's just like, how do we as a team fare in this with these 4 metrics?
What you said about responsibility as a team, but sometimes we hear, I don't know if it's because it contains the test word, but testability is often the responsibility of the tester. Do you think this has changed already? And by your descriptions, I saw that some of the teams, if you have a good team, the developers understand the importance of testability and kind of ship in and collaborate. But do you think most of the teams are this way? And if not, what are the specific practices or rituals that can help enhancing testability as a team instead of just the tester?
It is a difficult one, because I think testability, like I say, it has the word in it, and also I think it suffers from a little bit of, can be quite conceptual testability.
Yeah.
Rather than like a prescribed set of, it's very conceptual and like with deep context to it as well. So it can be difficult. So I guess first, like, testability is often the responsibility of the tester. Let's try and address that one. I don't know how much this has changed, but my view on why has probably changed over the course of my career as well. So I think that developers have the biggest influence on testability. So rather than
building,
exactly.
So it's like building quality in, right?
Yeah,
building testability in.
So there's more of them, and they're usually cutting the code, or most of the code, and by that definition, then they make the biggest difference to testability. So if you can get developer or developers on your side and buying into testability, you're winning. But they also have to be let in to contribute as well. I think sometimes maybe as testers we kind of hang on to it a bit too hard, the testing, because of what we were discussing earlier about metrics and things like that. So personally, I'm happy to see the ready for test column piling up, and I can easily wait for developers or offer to developers to say, hey, let's pair on these, but I'm not going to take them all away and do them myself, because that's the wrong behavior to model. But I would say that most developers don't even know that the testers' testability challenges exist, just haven't shared.
Sometimes.
Yeah. And I think
sometimes people live like in 2 different worlds, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the developers have got other things to worry about as well. They're trying to build features, which is, quite, it's quite intensive on the old brain, I think. As far as I'm aware. So I think as a reference for this, I wrote a blog a little while ago. It was called My Testability, Our Testability, and The Testability. So my testability is you, the tester. Our testability is the whole team, and the testability is that of the system. What you find is, and I've done this as well, I'm not coming at this from a point of, I'm completely innocent, because I have often gone onto teams and ended up as, the crucial cog where no one will do anything testing related unless I'm there, which is obviously a bad thing, and I try and mitigate it as much as I can, but it's just hard. Some teams begin to rely on you. So, but if you as a tester do all the testing, then my testability as the tester is big, it's huge, and it overshadows the team's ability to test, and then the testability of the system as well. So you need to balance it all out. So invite people in to test with you and not test everything in the in-test column or ready-to-test column or whatever your column is. It's like having a model to consider, like, where are we honestly as a team with testability? So if the tester's testability is dominant, then the team are not going to test and they're not going to improve the testability of the system. So you need to balance out your ability to test, the team's ability to test, and then the testability of the system. And if those three are like in balance, you can have a better testability experience.
Let me connect back to the exploratory testing, also that topic that I love so much. Do you think exploratory testing can help enhance testability and the other way around?
I guess it's like, I see it, they have very similar aims. So testability, so the easier it is to test, the easier it is to detect the most important problems with the system and find out the most important information, which is not necessarily what's written in the ticket or the acceptance criteria. But then exploratory testing has a very similar aim as well. You want to find the most important problems, which may be slightly off the beaten path of, the whatever has been delivered or whatever the feature is. So I think they do have very similar and complementary aims. I think I would want to see them as like sides of a very similar coin. And the great thing about exploratory testing to me is that you're doing testing which enhances testability, which I think is a lovely, like, hopeful message, So your system might be hard to test, but the moment that you start exploratory testing, then you're enhancing its testability. You could be, I don't know, finding bugs, getting them fixed, writing up a document about how something works, adding some information onto the API spec to say, these payloads give you these responses. And it's just like, all that is absolute like testability gold to me. And you're just starting to add more and more to the product. And exploratory testing helps you to do that.
It's almost poetic. Exploratory testing and testability.
It is.
Yeah, you should have a t-shirt with
that. Yeah, I mean, it works for all kinds of testing, right? So if you add the first unit test to a project with mock dependencies, so you've tested it and you've understood its dependencies and you've made it easier for someone else to then add tests in a similar area. It's like, it's all win.
Yeah,
it really is.
And sometimes
it really is.
we think that the output is just bugs and issues, but what we discover and what you can even feed the automation testing with what you discover. You can feed manual testing. You can change that. You can enhance testability. So yeah, I believe if you don't use exploratory testing, you better start thinking about using it.
I think exploratory testing is probably one of the more powerful methods of adding testability, of enhancing testability within your product. Like say, you're not trying to create a set of test scripts. You probably, your output might be something which is a bit more universal to the team, like some documentation or a less buggy area of the product.
And you can show what you mean by testability via what you discover on exploratory testing. And it stops being so theoretical and starts to be more practical, which is
absolutely. And I've always quite liked in like exploratory testing notes, you can add like a little section which says things that made it hard to test. It's a great way to capture that sort of stuff as you go, rather than systems and architectures change over time. It's kind of hard to do. Point in time reviews of things like testability are a bit, to me, they're a bit like they have limited usage. It's more like, how do we build this into what we do? And like with exploratory testing, it's just that sort of easy. You could just say, right, well, while we're exploratory testing, if something is hard to test or not clear, we'll put it in our hard to test notes section. And then we'll talk about it in the debrief afterwards. And it's like, it's not some major, you don't have to get some consultancy in to come and do a testability audit. You can do it yourselves with just the information that you find on the ground, but in a very simple way. I don't offer a testability audit, by the way. I just come in and do some exploratory testing.
That will do. Time just flies by. I think we just have time for one more questions to cover. So let's go and see a little bit of related with the risk area, because as everything, not everything is always roses and unicorns. And sometimes when you do too much of one thing, it easily transforms in something else. So imagine you have reached a level of testability of your product that you think is testable enough, but your team has never invested in exploratory testing. What may have you been missing for not doing that, and what may you gain of investing in exploratory testing?
So you have invested in testability, but you just limited your testing activities.
Yeah.
It's an interesting scenario, because the idea of greater testability is that you would be able to do a more rounded set of testing activities. I guess there's nuance there as well, because say if you could invest a lot of time in your system, as in making your system more controllable, observable, decomposable, and simple. But then say if the people who were testing it, their skills remained similar, same, or you just didn't review your testing strategy to add to it afterwards, then I think the risk there is obviously you would lose a set of lenses on quality, if you like. So say if you needed to add security, accessibility, performance, and load, whatever the testing was that you needed, and you had a very testable system, then vary your testing activities. I think you would probably lose a lot of perspective on the system and start finding that you have some fairly fundamental issues cropping up. The example I always use is if you've got an API endpoint which returns the number of orders a customer has placed, and all the status codes are right, and it comes back with the right contract, but then as soon as someone does 5 or 10 orders, then it just takes takes 5 minutes to return a response, or just times out. Then it doesn't work, does it? So testability gives you that ability to do lots of varied testing activities to whatever your need is and whatever the qualities that your customer wants.
As time flies, I now want to make you not a tricky question, but a learning question.
Sure.
Where would you point our listeners to in order to learn more about the testability and eventually about also exploratory testing?
Okay. So first, I guess this is probably similar to where I started, but thankfully there's been a few people who've developed testability thinking further as well. The first foundational model is still James Back's heuristics of software testability, because it's conceptually excellent stuff. It talks about intrinsic and extrinsic testability, as in that of the product and that of everything around the product, and kind of really helped me to build my paradigm of testability about what affected it and what didn't. And also, as we just kind of discussed, you can work on the intrinsic testability of your product a lot, but if you neglect the extrinsic parts, the team around it, the project, the 10 Ps, all those things, then you're still not going to achieve a level of testability you want. And then 2 things for the second one is the Team Guide to Testability book by Rob and myself. I think it's probably I don't know of any other books that have attempted to talk about testability in that way. And I was reading it back the other day and I thought, this is actually rather good.
Unbiased opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I heard that you're supposed to be embarrassed by your first book, but I'm not embarrassed by it. And then there's also the Dimensions of Testability by Maria Kedemo and I think Ben Kelly as well, which was some really good thinking around all the various different dimensions. So building on the heuristics of software testability and then applying it to a team context. There's an excellent paper by Maria and Ben, which is definitely worth a look. And then thirdly, you've got the likes of Ashley Graff and Nicola Lindgren, who've updated testability thinking with some concrete examples, which I think is really important. It's good to be able to talk about it at the conceptual level, but eventually you need to go onto a team and start to do it. And what is a good pattern? It's for example, you might want to add a debug and dev menu to your mobile app, which is hidden from customers, but you can use it to, turn on and off feature flags, up the logging level, whatever it is that you want to do. is a good pattern for a mobile app. Mobile apps are traditionally quite hard to test. They've made a mug out of me quite a few times. But what are those concrete examples? So I think Ashley and Nicola's work has been really, really good for that.
Yes. Thanks so much for being here with us. We could be here talking the rest of the day and the rest of the week.
So much.
We have much more questions, but we have to skip some of them. No worries.
Can I add my message of hope to testers on hard to test systems? This will be quick. So sorry to interrupt, Sergio.
Yeah, go ahead.
If your system is hard to test, and maybe you feel a bit lonely as a tester on a team not to get much help, so remember these things. So be kind to yourself. You are testing, thereby increasing testability. So you're doing something about it right now with your daily work. So well done. Devs are not a single mass. There is always one willing to help out a bit. But I understand. I've been in the situation where it feels like a bit of a wall in front of you. But eventually, hopefully, will show themselves. And then if you can find that helpful developer, get them to help you setting up the system to run it locally, which is massive for me in terms of testability. So early testing is great for testability, exploratory testing, and developers prefer you to give your feedback as soon as, very close to when they've decided that they're ready for you to look at it, not 3 days later. So that would be my message of hope for any testers out there struggling with testability.
And a very good one, I have to say. Thank you so much for being with us today.